Today, we're going to be talking about identifying functions. Sometimes you might be given a table like this and be asked, is this a function or not? Well, first, I want to bring your attention to the x values here. The x column. Let's ignore the y column for now. Let's just look at the x column. And I want you to ask yourselves, is there an x number that appears more than once here? Well, I see 10 appear once. I see 17 appear once. Oh, I see 10 appear again. Well, let's take a look at what the 10 is being paired up with. So it looks like 10 is being paired up with 17. Okay. I look down here again, but then 10 is paired up with 4. Huh. When you see this type of behavior, it is not a function. Another way you can think about this is if x values were people and y values are like destinations or locations, right? Let's think about this. If you were at home right now, would you also be able to be at the grocery store at the same time? Probably not, right? You're only one being, right? So you can think of it this as like 10 trying to be at location 17, but also 10 being at location 4, which can't can't be possible. It doesn't make sense, right? So we would say no, this is not a function. Let's take a look at another example. So again, we're going to pay attention to the x values here. So the x column. And we're going to ask ourselves, is there an x number that appears more than once here? Well, I see an x number of 4, 18, and 17. Huh, doesn't look like any x values appear more than once here. When you see this kind of behavior, it is automatically yes, a function. Here's another problem. Notice how now we're given sets of ordered pairs instead of a table. Well, we can directly translate these ordered pairs onto a table. So remember how earlier we had a table of x and y values? We can just copy them down. So ordered pairs, the first value is usually the x, and the second value is the y value. And I can just copy it down. 6, 10, cross, 14, 7, 14, 8, 10, 1. Again, we're going to look at our x values here, the x column, and we're going to look at if there are any x values up here more than once. 6 appears once, 14 appears once. Oh, looks like 14 appears a second time. 10 appears once. Huh. Well, let's look at what 14 is paired up with. Well, it looks like 14 is paired up with 7, and then 14 is also paired up with 8, right? 14 is trying to be at two places at once. That is a no-no. So we are going to say no. That is not a function. Here's another one. Again, we are given sets of ordered pairs and we can translate them directly onto a table. 2013 to 7, 1612. And again, we're going to look at the x column. Is there a x value that appears more than once? Well, 20 appears once, 2 appears once, 16 appears once. Looks good. All right, so we would say yes, that is a function. Here's another problem. Notice how now we're given a graph instead of a table or ordered pairs. But we can translate these points on a graph into their ordered pairs, and then we can take a look at them and decide if they are a function or not. So, just a refresher on reading points on a graph. You'll notice that every point will have some sort of horizontal distance and a vertical distance. The horizontal distance we refer to as our x-axis, and our vertical distance is referred to as the y-axis. So for instance, this point over here, it will have some sort of horizontal distance and some sort of vertical distance. And that is how we're going to refer to these points. Well, let's take a look let's start with that point. What is the horizontal distance of that point? Well, we have to start at the point where the x and the y intersect over here. That is going to be our starting point. So our horizontal distance, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the x value is 6. My vertical distance, 1, 2, 3. So that point is 6, 3. All right, moving on to the next point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My horizontal distance is 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My vertical distance is 5. Right, let's take a look at this last point down here. Let's take a look at our horizontal distance. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, so it's 7. What's our vertical distance? Well, since we're not climbing up or down, our vertical distance is really just 0. So it would be 7, 0. And again, if you want, you can put them on a table if you want. You don't have to. 6, 3, 6, 5, 7, 0. Are there any x values that appear more than once here? Well, let's take a look. 6 appears once. It appeared twice. 7 appeared once. Well, let's take a look at who 6 is paired up with. 6 is paired up with 3 and also paired up with 5. When that happens, we would say that is not a function. Another thing I want you to notice, when you try to connect the points, these 2 points here in particular, you'll notice that they'll form a vertical line. When that happens, that is also another sign that can tell you that it is not a function. That's another way you can look at a graph and tell whether or not it's a function or not. Here's another problem. Notice how we're given a graph. Well, our graph looks a little bit different from the one earlier, and that's because we were only given this portion of the graph. Now we're given the whole coordinate plane. But again, each point will have some sort of horizontal distance, x, and some vertical distance, y. And our starting point is where the x and the y-axis intersect, the two lines where the horizontal and the vertical lines intersect. That is our starting point. And another word for the starting point, which I forgot to mention earlier, is called the origin. And it has the coordinate 0, 0, because it has 0 horizontal length and 0 vertical distance. So this is our starting point. Let's try to read this point. So it has a horizontal distance of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, and a vertical distance of 1. So that's 5, 1. Let's try to read this point down here. Again, let's think about our starting point. It has a horizontal distance of 1, but because we're going backwards, we're going to the left, it will be negative 1 instead. And the vertical distance, are we climbing up or are we dropping down? Well, we're dropping down. So we'll use a negative 1 as vertical distance. So that point will be negative 1, negative 1. Right, let's try to read this point down here. Again, this is our starting point here. Well, it looks like there is no horizontal distance at all. So we'll just use a 0 to represent that. But there is a vertical distance 1, 2, 3, 4. But we're dropping down, so we will use a negative 4 to show that. And again, you can draw your table if you want. You don't have to. 5, 1, negative 1, negative 1, 0, negative 4. We're going to pay attention to our x column here. There doesn't seem to be any x number that appears more than once, so we would say yes, that is a function. You can also think about the vertical line we were talking about earlier. If you try to connect the points, we seem to get slanted lines. We don't seem to be getting any of the vertical lines that we were getting from the last problem. So that's another sign that tells you that yes, this is a function.